Hey there friends, Dave Paulides, Canine Missing Project copyrighted edition for our video channel. Thanks you very much for being here. And this is a missing person segment. And we will be talking about everything related to missing people. If you didn't watch my special edition of my review of Skinwalker Ranch, please go back and watch it. It's got a ton of hits. I really went into a lot of detail connecting the dots that many people don't know about Skinwalker Ranch. And I think you may like it because I believe it's related to what we're doing. So, let's get on to the letters. So, hi again. Just got done watching your newest video. Huck is the best. I would have no desire to live if dogs did not exist. I read an article several years ago. It had to do with a dog's sense of smell. In this article, they performed a test. They had a person take a bullet, let the dog smell it, then put it in his pocket, leave the building, and walk 2 miles to the beach. They then let the dog go out of the building. The dog was able to follow the scent of the bullet for 2 miles to the beach where it was found. Your comment so many times on your videos, dogs didn't pick up a scent. This is impossible. If the scent was there, the dogs would find it. Leads me to believe something else is at play. These people seem to be taken and then brought back to be found. Many times, as you have stated, been dropped. And why so many times with their shoes off? Mind-boggling, mind-baffling, but maybe, just maybe, with your research, we will one day find out what is going on. Friends, this is a community effort. It's not just me. Everybody out there has offered a small piece to the puzzle. I can't tell you how many times somebody has referred me to a case I didn't know, to an angle that may have gotten past us. The village is the reason this was created. And when Ben foresaw that YouTube was an angle to reach out to the masses and to communicate, have a dialogue, that was important. Now I'm still looking for that online live dialogue where I could have it on the same channel, where I could upload a video over an hour in length, where I could have subscribers. I've explained this all many times, and hopefully I will get there one of these days. But as of right now, it doesn't exist to the best of my knowledge. The comment here by this villager, something else has to be at play. And it's abnormal, very abnormal. You hear about hundreds of cases where I've talked about scent isn't picked up. But there are tens of thousands of cases in the U.S. every year where canines find missing people, canines find wanted people, and I'm not talking about them here because they are so common. Here, what is so common is there is no scent trail, and that is the abnormal part of this. Now, many people can rationalize this away and say, well, maybe the canines weren't so good, maybe the rain inhibited the search, maybe the dog was having a bad day. Yeah, you could rationalize all that stuff. But the reality of it is, when you look at it in its totality, when you take in the fact that many times they're using professional trackers and there's no tracks. Wait a minute, no scent? No tracks? What's going on here? But there's always more, isn't there? Next letter. Hope this email finds you well. English is not my first language, so please excuse me for any grammatical errors. Of course. I'm originally from Brazil and moved to the U.S. 3 years ago for my graduate degree. I'm fortunate to have had the opportunity to go to prestigious business school and landed a good job at a big company. I don't believe education has any relation with an increased ability to think or observe. getting excited about something. In fact, some of the most closed-minded people I've ever met were highly educated. However, even coming from a group of people from which most believe skepticism is a quality, I've had enough experiences to make me think otherwise. I would like to share one with you. Almost 30 years ago, my family used to travel at least once a year to a hotel in the mountains near Rio de Janeiro. It was truly a beautiful place. My parents were friends with the owners, and we all loved to go there. One specific time when I was about 3 years old, they put us up in a cabin we had never been in before. I was too young to have any recollection of this, but it became something my whole family talks about until this day. One specific time when I was about 3 years old, they put us in a cabin, again, that we hadn't been in. We arrived late that night and went straight to bed. The next morning, my parents, uncles, and cousins were already in the living room when my mom came in the room to wake me up. As I left the room, my face immediately changed and I went running back in. My mom came to get me, and for several times I would sneak a peek out of the room and refuse to leave. When they asked me what was going on, I kept saying that I was afraid of the old lady. They tried explaining there was no old lady there, and I insisted there was one sitting in the rocking chair. After a few minutes of this, I eventually said she was not there anymore, and I left the room. The same morning, during breakfast in the hotel, the owners of it came to sit with us at the table. My parents told this story, laughing and saying that the place was haunted, jokingly. The lady owner did not laugh and asked me what did she look like. As I described the clothes and the accessories she was using, her face turned white. She left the table and came back with a picture of her mother, which I confirmed was the old lady I was sitting in the rocking chair. Apparently she had lived in the cabin the last years of her life and passed away just a few months before. I don't have an explanation for this. I know it sounds like the kind of story people tell to scare kids, but I never saw it as scary. I saw it as a good sign that we are more than just meat and bone. Whether it was residual energy or she wanted to be seen, there's more to this world than we can see with our eyes. I don't know if you've heard similar stories, but hope you find this interesting. I'm not sure how much research you've done about Brazil. I imagine the language barrier makes it difficult, but we do not lack on weird things going on. If you're interested, I could share some UFO experiences in the email. Thank you for your work. Have a great week. Yeah, I know there's a lot of weird stuff going on in Brazil. I hear some of the strangest stories in the world coming out of Brazil. The problem with Brazil is you can't vet the stories. And they're so obscenely outrageous that I have to discount them because you can't vet them. But I'm not saying that they're all not true. I'm just saying that I don't even go there. Now, the vision that this boy had. You can go on to dozens of ghost shows and things that are on cable TV, and you can see people have visions of something. My question to you is, the visions that you have when you're awake, is it similar to the visions you have or the dreams you have when you're asleep? Are they related? Were they meant to impart something on you who saw it or had the dream? Like, why wasn't this lady able to be seen by the others in the room and just this young boy? And why do only certain people have these dreams that deal with missing people? Why not others? Or do others have it and for some reason they're reluctant to come forward? And then why specifically are these people chosen to be the ones with the vision? And I ask you that because can you imagine the hundreds of people that stayed in this guest room? And it apparently nobody else ever said anything to anyone about this lady, as the owner seemed astounded that the boy had seen her. It's a good question. And it's something that hard to explain. Maybe a true science team needs to go into a room like this that has a history of this and try to measure every imaginable level of radiation, heat, RF, whatever you can imagine, and we can measure it, we should measure it. Keep our camera rolling 24/7. See what can be picked up. Now, I will tell you this, that if a camera picked something up that rare, that unusual, vast majority of you wouldn't believe it. You'd say, oh, that's interesting, but unless you were there and you saw it for yourself, you probably wouldn't believe it. So thanks for the story. Next letter. I've been meaning to write you for weeks, but been too busy with the construction of the house, which is in its final stages now, and we're doing everything ourselves on top of working full-time, raising a 2-year-old boy and our 4-month-old pup. I was shocked after 4 years of not watching your videos to hear that. I don't know how I would deal with my son's death, especially after watching him grow into such a fine young man. I truly share your pain. I live in a small town named Gore in the province of Quebec. It's in a very wooded area and we don't have many neighbors. I often wonder if there's ever been any Bigfoot sightings around here. I've never heard of any, but you never know. My entire life is a series of paranormal events, and I really wish to share some of that with you, but it would make for a very long email, and I know you don't like those, so right now I'm going to tell you about something that happened to me just on Wednesday, April 30th, in the woods behind my house. Well, that's pretty current. I was walking my pup after getting home from the morning shift. I'm a school bus driver. And it was just going to be a short walk because all I had with me was my phone and a leash, dog treats, and a coffee. You had your hands full. I was following the old logging trail that circles around the back of my properties on my street and decided to cut through the woods up the ridge, which would make me straight to the back of my property into the area where there's a cave there's a cave. Except that's not where I ended up. I ended up in a boulder field, which is 2 properties over to the north. Walking up the ridge, I was walking west to east, and each time I had to go around something, I would stick to my right or my south, and make sure I wouldn't walk up too far to the north. When I reached the top of the ridge, I saw 2 big hemlock trees growing together on top of a stone with thick moss at the foot, and I took a picture thinking it would look like a fairy grove. It'd be a nice spot to sit. Then as I got further, I realized that I wasn't next to the cave I'm familiar with. There were some huge moss-covered stones that looked exactly like it, but they weren't it. And the more I walked, the more I was realizing I had no clue where I was. One of those stones had a strange-looking birch growing against it, and my dog started growling at it. That's when I put her on a leash. The next thing I needed was for us to get separated. When I found the spot again, I found out the stone in question in granite with visible crystalline formations in it, and there is a spring flowing from within the stone. Kept on thinking about you and how I don't want to be your next list of strange disappearances. I knew I was still in the woods around my house and I could hear the creek way down the hill in front of me, but it was too steep to risk going down blindly. Smart. At some point, I decided to try and make my way back the way I came, and I kept telling my dog to take us back home, hoping it would bear fruit. At long last, I saw orange tape around a tree, and I knew I had reached a property line and ended up in the back of my neighbor's property, which is north of ours. The properties here are long and narrow, 60 meters street view, and about a 300-meter long stretch east to west with huge wooded area in the back. As soon as I got home, I figured I needed to go back on another day of retrace my steps and see if I got lost like a rookie. The day after, it was pouring rain all day, so I avoided hypothermia and went the next day. On that Friday, I entered the woods from the trail exactly as I did before, with all the same reference points, next to a stone about 15 meters from a fork in the road. Well, damn it, I ended up exactly where I was expecting to end up previously, on familiar ground. The day after that, I walked from my neighbor's property and traced my steps back to the boulder field, Had a look around and tried to reach the western trail from there. It was downhill the whole time and quite a ways, a solid 5 minutes. I would have noticed if I had gone that way before, and I ended up about 20 meters back from the trail in the opposite direction. So I made my way back up the ridge looking for those 2 hemlocks, which I haven't found yet. And as I was walking, I saw a head facing me. It was one of those, what was that, moments, and when you stop and look back, the thing is gone, but the image is crisp in my mind. I was still on the slope of the ridge amid there was a boulder on higher ground between me and the entity, and it was hiding the entire body, which would have been humanoid according to the shape of the head, and the entity was farther back, so all I could see was the head. It was featureless, like many of tour viewers seemed to have witnessed. The color was a whitish gray, and where the face would be was kind of outlined, not perfectly like an oval, but the way it would be if you would draw a line above the eyebrows and down to the cheeks and chin. The face part was a dull olive green. When I looked back, it wasn't there, but there wasn't anything in that area, so I could have mistaken for a head. I'm sure of that. The boulder field is about 500 meters from where I left the trail originally, and I truly believe that I was transported there instantly. I don't know for what reason, but maybe I'll find out eventually. I hope the letters from the viewers. I love the letters from the viewers. I love hearing stories that could have happened to me. It makes me feel more normal in a way, in a sea of abnormality. But then again, who defines the norm? Stay strong, Dave. Thank you. A couple of things. People have made light before about the Boulder Field Association. Stupidity. And I don't mean to be mean about that, but some people are reluctant to engage a topic that they know nothing about, and it seems strange on its face. Now, a lot of you have known me for a long time. I like to think I'm based in facts, I'm rational, and I use a degree of common sense. And if the same thing keeps coming up time after time, only an idiot would ignore it. Now, in this instance, the person said they thought that they were transported to the boulder field somehow. Now, why the boulder field? Why? Remember, we've talked about granite many times. What is it about granite and boulder fields? Well, could things live in the boulder field? Number one. Number two, could energy be derived from the boulder field? Number three, there was a creek nearby the boulder field. When you couple water with granite, you get some unusual things happening, as we have talked about in previous videos. So do your own research on granite, and maybe you'll come to some of the same conclusions I have. Something strange is going on. All right, next letter. Hi, Dave. I was hooked on your work after watching Missing 411, The Hunted. Then I discovered your YouTube channel, which I am wholeheartedly hooked. I'm humbled. Thank you. I'm amazed at your impeccable research and the time and dedication you put into helping families of the missing and educating the village on hiking safety in vast North American wilderness. My hubby and I love to hike and enjoy nature. The bush is where I truly find peace and serenity. However, not on a few rare occasions. I gotta say that's true for me too. I've had a few experiences hiking that I've chalked up to just plain weird, and that is until I hear some of the experiences other villagers have had. Now to my story. In October 2020, my hubby and I took a hike up to Siflaroo Falls on the headwaters of the Saskatchewan River outside of Banff National Park. So let me tell you, if you've never been to Banff National Park, you need to get there. Gorgeous. It was a calm, chilly day through the week with only 3 other people on that trail that day. I purchased a GoPro for myself and used it a few times before this hike with great results. So I strapped it on the back of my pack for the 5-mile hike into the falls. About 2 miles in, on a ridge above a canyon, I heard something below in the bush. Expecting to see a mule deer, bear, or some other critter, I could see nothing as the forest was very thick and dark. After 5 minutes of staying absolutely still, I turned my back to the bush and the noise that I heard so I could see if my GoPro could pick something out that maybe I could not. I stood there quiet and still for maybe 10 to 15 minutes, and after no further sound, I continued back on the trail. As we got to the canyon waterfalls and at the end of the trail, that is where things took a strange turn. I felt strange and could not make sense of this feeling, and to this day I can't explain it in words. My heart starting to race and had an overwhelming sense of dread. Without saying a lot to my hubby, so not to cause him to panic, I mentioned to him we better get back out as we'll start getting back soon. Now let me stop there. If you're sensing something and your significant other with you is not, it would be best to tell them, just to put them in that same safety mode that you are. Because what if they argue with you, or they decide to stay, or they do something stupid in that couple of minute time frame? Best to say something. About halfway back out the trail, my dread was worsening to the point I was weak and feeling extreme fatigue, and labored breathing came over me. I was worried that I would not make the remaining few yards to the truck in the parking lot. I was now convinced that I was having a heart attack. I was 56, fit, and don't have any medical problems or take any drugs or medications. Being 50 miles from civilization and no cell service only heightened my dread. We raced to the hospital in Rocky Mountain House and was rushed in for tests. And after 4 hours in emergency, nothing was found wrong with me and was sent home in the diagnosis of possible infection. After leaving the hospital and the wilderness behind me, I slowly returned to my normal self. The next morning I checked my GoPro, and to my amazement, the time I spent on the ridge staring into the forest, my GoPro stopped recording just before the ridge and did not resume recording for 31 minutes after I resumed my hike to the falls. I believe there was something in that bush watching and following me to that day and causing the strange feelings and dread. This is just one experience of 3 I've had. Thanks, Dave. Please continue to your research with integrity and investigative expertise you possess in researching for the facts and the truth. God bless you in your path to healing with the loss of Ben. You're always in my prayers. Thank you. I need those prayers. A couple of things. Explain to people in the past that Angie and I were in Wyoming, and all of a sudden all of our cameras quit when we started to photograph a giant footprint in the middle of nowhere. And our cameras didn't start working again for about an hour and a half when we were way out of that area. This also mimics the behavior they've had at Skinwalker Ranch in the past. When their cameras fail, things don't work right at that critical moment, thumb drives don't work and record data. So what's happening here? Some people laugh and say, it's nothing, it's just made for film. Yeah, sorry. I'm telling you straight up front. I wouldn't lie to you guys about this. It happened to us. If you ever see Angie, ask her. Her own phone failed, and it never failed before. My phone and my camera both failed. My camera said something called lens error. It's a little digital camera about this big. Takes high resolution pictures. I've had it for 5 years. Never did it before. Never did it since. And it did it in amongst the other 2 failing. So it wasn't a coincidence. So the energy it would take to cause our equipment to fail in this way, you couldn't say it's extreme, but you could say it was targeted with intelligence, which to me, very scary. If there's something out there that is that smart, that could cause our technology to fail in that way, I have no doubt that they could do harm to us if they truly desired to do it. And if they're using technology to interfere with our technology, think back to Skinwalker Ranch when Travis had burn marks on his skin last season, or one of the members of the ranch had to go to the hospital because he had his brain started to swell. And then this year, another member at the ranch got an extreme headache while he was amongst other people. So it's been shown that they can inflict injuries. They can inflict death probably if they wanted to. And they have killed animals on that ranch, Skinwalker Ranch. Just the facts. Now, today I'm going to talk to you about 3 missing persons cases. And the first one is out of Saskatchewan. And I don't talk about Saskatchewan a lot, but it's a huge area of Canada. A lot of strange cases up there. Bill Earnshaw, 65 years old, missing September 23rd, 1981. His hometown was Regina, and he owned what was called the Green Thumb Nursery. He was an outdoorsman. He grew up hunting in the area where he disappeared. And that was a place called Clemenceau, and it was a 4-hour drive from Regina. Give it to you on the map. So here's the map. This is Montana, North Dakota, U.S. border. His residence was here in Regina. It's about a 4-hour drive to Clemenceau, where he hunted. There isn't a lot in this area out here, folks. And especially when you get up into this area, it's very thick, very thick. But he knew this area like you know your backyard. He hunted it dozens of times. So he's in a hunting camp with friends. On the second day of hunting, he's the first out of camp, and he says, I'll be back in the afternoon. Well, he doesn't come back. The area that they were hunting in was very swampy. Key number 1. When he didn't come back, they called the RCMP, and the RCMP immediately went in there and realized, oh, this is going to take a whole boatload of people. And they called in reinforcements. They brought in canines, planes, helicopters, and 100 of ground pounders. 100 ground pounders. Well, over the course of the next 3 weeks, they kept upping the odds. Now, at the end of October 31st, almost a month and 7 days after Bill disappeared, one of his sons was with a group of other searchers, and they came across Bill's rifle and his jacket in the middle of nowhere. Well, they decided to pull all their resources, put them into that area, bring a dog in there, because now they had a confined scent area. Dog couldn't pick up a scent. And they used half of November, another 15 days searching, found nothing. Then in April to May of 1982, there was another round of searches, equally as comprehensive. Found nothing. The family was very frustrated. They offered a $5,000 reward if they could find their husband, father. Search and rescue folks stated that many times during that first 3 weeks of searching, it rained on searchers. Well, he was a hunter. He was around a lot of water. Canines never picked up a scent. He was in a swamp. He was missing clothing. And weather was a big issue. He was never found. Now, September of 81. September's a month where it's a transitional period. It can be real warm or real cold. 2 things a hunter will never give up: a gun and their coat. Remember, I've told you hundreds of times, and if you're a hunter and you don't know this, pay attention. If you're lost, your gun is your salvation. Always carry at least 20 rounds with you when you go out hunting. Not because you're going to shoot 20 rounds at animals, but if you get lost, those 20 rounds are going to save your life. You fire off 3 rounds, and that means that you're in distress and you need help. And then every 2 or 3 hours after that, fire off 1 round. And that allows the people to come in and hone in where you're at. Don't move, stay still. In this case, there were at least 4 searches for Bill over a 2-year period. The only thing they found, his rifle and his coat. Bizarre. It makes no sense to me. And I know that's frustrating to some, but that's just the reality of these strange stories. Now, the next 2 stories, you've never heard about one of these people before in your life. And I'm sure after I tell this story, everyone will copy it on YouTube and say it's theirs, but you heard it first right here. Now, the first story has made its rounds before. The first story is about a young boy, 6 years old, named Bryce Herda, Herda. Bryce was a great kid. He was a Native American. And Bryce was with his family at the beach in a place called Neah Bay, Neah Bay, directly adjacent to Olympic National Park and Makaha Native American Reservation. Now, Neah Bay has about 12 streets and a gorgeous little harbor. It's isolated and very remote. On April 9th, 1995, Bryce and his family were down at Shishi Beach, and they came and used the Shishi Trail. Bryce's grandfather is the Native American Reservation police chief. Bryce being a Native American, they came up the Shishi Trail, and they got to a part that was real steep, and Bryce said, "Hey, I'm going to go this way, you guys go that way." And there were other kids and family, and they all got back to the car, and Bryce wasn't there. Well, there's a big search, and eventually they called the grandfather, who initiated one of the biggest searches at the time in Washington history. At one time, there were over 200 people searching, along with the grandfather, the reservation, and the Clemenceau County Sheriffs, locals, natives, Coast Guard, National Park Service, everything you can imagine. Now, April 9th, 1995, very few beachgoers because it's cool. Very, very little traffic. Bryce was in an area where there was nobody else but this family. There was no place to go but up if you wanted to get to a car, and there were no other cars in the area. Now, part of an 8-day search included bloodhounds and U.S. Coast Guard divers that went into the bay right offshore. So, the red dot is Neah Bay. This is the Strait of the Juan de Fuca. The first yellow marker is where Bryce disappeared in Makaha Bay. That area was searched by Coast Guard multiple times. Now, there were second searches and third searches initiated by the family. Nothing was ever found of Bryce Herda. Now, National Association of Missing and Exploited Children did an age progression of what Bryce would look like today. Again, missing April 9th, 1995. This is wrong. This was many years ago. But this is age progressed to him being 19 years old. Remember the picture. Now, when I wrote this story in Missing 411 Western U.S., I didn't even know about another story, essentially in the same location, that happened years before. Now, Bryce disappeared April 9th, 1995. This next case disappeared September 21st, 1967. I've stated hundreds of times on videos, If I have disappearances happen within a very short period of time, let's say a year, 3 years, 5 years, people working that area, law enforcement, fire, search and rescue, they're going to remember these things. But if I spread them out 25, 30 years, all of a sudden people retire, people forget, it's not important anymore. As far as I know, I'm the only person that's gone back in history to try to understand the relationship between missing, disappearances, locations of those people, and clusters of missing people. I don't know anyone that's ever done that. Now in this case, Robert Kepner, 22 years old, he was a University of Washington graduate student in clinical psychology. Brilliant. Smart man. And he went to an area a quarter-mile south from where Bryce was located. And he set up a camp. And he was there for a few days. He hung his clothes up on a line. He had a sleeping bag out. He had other supplies there. Well, a person living in the area saw Robert's car parked just south of where Bryce disappeared. And was there for a couple of days, and it was strange because nobody just left their cars there for a couple of days. Called the police, called the Clemenceau County Sheriff. They came out and ran the license plate. They had another police department go by Robert's residence, and they found out that nobody had picked up the mail at his residence since September 18th. Well, they got concerned. They contacted Robert's parents, who lived in Vancouver, Washington. And at that point, they thought he was in school, and he should have been in school. And they nailed the date of the disappearance as September 21st, 67. The campsite was near a place called Petroleum Creek, just south of Makaha Bay. The sheriff specifically said there was no indication that Robert went in the water. And in fact, many of the articles at the time stated that Robert was a missing hiker. Missing hiker was in the title of the articles. He was supposedly to go camping and do some hiking in this area. It was on land of the Makaha Reservation. During the search, there was rain and fog. He disappeared next to water, and he disappeared in a cluster of disappearances. Robert was never found. That made no sense to anybody at the time or now. So Bryce and Robert disappeared within a half-mile of each other in an area very remote, in an area of high strangeness. Now, it's a picture of Robert. Again, I've told you before, the people that disappear are smart, if not brilliant. Second year in graduate school at 22 years old. University of Washington, clinical psychology. Smart young man. So, this is Neah Bay. Down here is Port Angeles, Washington. This is Petroleum Creek, where Robert was camped. This is the Shishi Trail, where Bryce disappeared. Now I'm going to give you the big overview of the area. The big overview. This is where I was just talking to you about. This is Neah Bay. Folks, there's 2, there's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 disappearances in that area. In this area right here, these are all men 22 years old or younger who have disappeared and weren't found. Just south of here, there's more cases of just young men who disappeared on the coast and were never found. I talked to you about both of these cases recently in a video. This is a case that disappeared up the coast. This is Canada right here. Now this is the Straits of the Juan de Fuca. gave a presentation in Washington about these cases, Herda, in some cases here, and here. And I said that is the key right here. This goes into, this is Seattle over in this area. This area goes out to the Pacific Ocean. So this is a primary ground in here to feed everything in this part of Washington. Something is going on right there, folks. Trust me about that. When I say water is the key, that water is the key. It's all males, no females. Why? When I found Kepner's case, I couldn't believe it, really. There were so many young men cases on that piece of ground. It's hard to believe. One last thing I want to tell you. It doesn't show it real clear right here, but this is an Olympic National Park. Start green area right in here. It goes down into there. Tons of missing person cases that are very, very odd. I mean, really odd. So how many times do I sit here and tell you that? Too many times to count at this point. I've posted about 265 videos now that you can watch. And if you look at the video that's on your screen and you see the little Can-Am missing logo, all you have to do is hit that logo and it'll take you to the rest of the videos I've made. It does get frustrating to have many of you send me videos that other people made just copying our work. Very frustrating. And the painstaking work we go to find these cases, it's not easy, folks. That's why no one else has ever done it. It's very hard. But then once the profile is established, you know exactly what you're looking for. And it's stunningly unreal to us that we're able to find the number of cases we have going back in time. Some of you have made comments saying, well, Dave, these older cases are stupid. We don't want to hear about them. They're unimportant to us. Then you truly don't understand why we're doing this. Because as you go back in time, with time things change. We didn't have the technology back in 1967 when Robert disappeared that we have in 2022 today. Now that's important. If the profiles have stayed the same going back over 100 years, and we have them going back to the 1600s, so 600 years, what is happening? 400 years. What is happening? Again, I refer you back to the Skinwalker review I did just a couple days ago. Watch it. And I want people to start thinking about, what do we have in our possession that could control the profile points I've explained to you? Is there anything that we have that can come close? And remember, the same type of disappearances happened in the 1600s that are happening today. That's something you can't lose track of. So, I'm humbled that you're here. I'm equally grateful that many of you have taken the time to write copious amounts of letters. And they're important, which is why I read them. I appreciate you taking that time. And every one of those villagers out there right now, everyone that's watching, I want you to understand that it's the power of us that are going to solve it. And I want you to today, when you watch this, next time you go out, put your mind in gear. Think about what I've talked about. Think about some of these disappearances. Think outside the box. Think of other shows you've watched. Think of what you've heard. And then, when you're about ready to walk into that store and you see some elderly or disabled person coming towards the door, do something nice. Hold the door open. Say, hey, I hope you have a good day. Do something nice for somebody. And that power of being polite and nice is sometimes overwhelming. It could take that person that was having a bad day, transform them into a good day. And if you can do that, you've really done something special. I appreciate you being here. You can follow me on Twitter at David Paulides at Can-Am Missing. And our videos are available on YouTube, The Hunted, Missing 411, The Hunted, and Missing 411. Do not buy our books on eBay or Amazon. You're going to get ripped off by resellers. The website for our books are listed on the pinned #1 comment for this video. I appreciate you being here. Please copy the link on this video and put it up at your social sites. I'd be humbled if you did that. Paulides out.